Hello and welcome back to the Sleepy Darwin. Whether you're here to drift peacefully towards sleep, to unwind from the complexities of your day, or to simply let your mind wander through the hidden mysteries within you, you're in exactly the right place. Tonight, we're embarking on a journey into the most intimate conspiracy of all, one that's been unfolding inside every single one of your cells for your entire life. We're going to explore the possibility that your DNA, that ancient molecular architect coiled in your nucleus, might have its own agenda, and that agenda might not always align with what you think you want. Now, before we descend into this cellular mystery, I have a gentle request. If you find comfort in these sleepy explorations of science, a like and subscribe would mean the world to me, and perhaps to the 4 billion years of genetic wisdom quietly humming in your bloodstream. I'd love to know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of the world. Are you tucked in bed somewhere, or perhaps curled up as the last light fades from your window? As always, I hope this isn't too fascinating to keep you awake. But if it is, and you find yourself pondering the microscopic conversations happening in your cells, at least you'll drift off with some intriguing thoughts about evolution, consciousness, and whether you're really in charge of your own life. So settle in, breathe slowly, and let's discover what your DNA might be whispering in the dark. Tonight, I want you to imagine something with me. Picture yourself shrinking down, smaller and smaller, past the world you can see with your naked eye, past the realm of microscopes in high school biology class, down into the secret universe that exists within a single cell of your body. Are you comfortable? Maybe you're curled up under a soft blanket, or perhaps you're watching the last light fade from your window. Wherever you are in the world tonight, know that as you listen to these words, there's an entire cosmos of activity happening inside you, a bustling, ancient conversation that's been going on since long before you took your first breath. Let's step inside one of your cells together. Imagine it's like walking into a city at night, but not just any city. Picture the most vibrant metropolis you've ever seen, maybe New York with its glittering windows stretching toward the sky, or Tokyo with its neon rivers of light flowing through canyon-like streets. Your cell is like this, but infinitely more complex, infinitely more alive. The cytoplasm around us shimmers like a warm, golden fog. Mitochondria, those tiny powerhouses, pulse with energy like street lamps coming to life at dusk. Ribosomes drift by like busy commuters, carrying their molecular briefcases full of proteins. The endoplasmic reticulum stretches out like an intricate subway system, transporting precious cargo from one district to another. But there, at the very heart of this cellular city, sits something extraordinary: the nucleus. If this cell were Manhattan, the nucleus would be like the most important library that ever existed, bigger than the Library of Alexandria, older than any human institution, and filled with more information than every book ever written. And yet, this library isn't quiet. No gentle whispers of turning pages here. Instead, imagine walking into the busiest newsroom you've ever seen. RNA molecules zip back and forth like reporters, chasing, breaking stories. Enzymes work frantically like editors, cutting and splicing and rearranging information. Proteins fold and unfold like origami masters working at superhuman speed. This is where your DNA lives. Not in peaceful silence, but in the middle of the most dynamic, fast-paced information hub imaginable. And here's what's truly remarkable. This DNA of yours, coiled up in elegant spirals like the most beautiful spiral staircase, might actually be thinking. Not thinking the way you think, of course. DNA doesn't wonder what to have for breakfast or worry about tomorrow's weather, but in its own molecular way, it's constantly making decisions. Which genes to turn on, which proteins to make, how to respond to the environment around it. Your DNA is receiving signals, processing information, and making choices. Billions of them, every single second. Now, as we sit here in this cellular newsroom, listening to the constant chatter of molecular machinery, I want you to consider something that might make you feel wonderfully small and infinitely connected at the same time. The DNA around us, your DNA is ancient, not just old, but ancient in a way that stretches the imagination. Every spiral of genetic code in your body carries within it a history that spans 4 billion years. 4 billion years. That's a number so large it becomes almost meaningless, until you realize what it represents. Your DNA remembers the first spark of life on this planet. It carries within its molecular structure the memory of being a simple bacterium, floating in the primordial oceans under a sky with no oxygen. It remembers the great evolutionary experiments, the first time cells learned to eat sunlight, the first time they discovered how to work together, the momentous decision to develop a nucleus and become complex. Think about that for a moment. The DNA in your cells right now contains the accumulated wisdom of every single one of your ancestors, stretching back not just to your great-great-grandmother, but to the very first living thing that ever drew breath on Earth. Your DNA remembers being a fish, feeling water flow over primitive gills as it explored ancient seas. It remembers the momentous day when life first crawled onto land, that awkward, gasping transition from water to air that changed everything. It remembers developing legs, growing fur, learning to see in color, developing the first glimmers of what would eventually become consciousness. Every time your heart beats, you're experiencing the rhythm that DNA has been perfecting for millions of generations. Every time you take a breath, you're participating in a process that your DNA has been refining since the first lungfish decided to gulp air. Every time you feel curious about the world around you, you're experiencing the culmination of DNA's greatest experiment, a creature capable of wondering about its own existence. This is what makes the conversation in your cells so extraordinary. It's not just molecular machinery at work, it's the continuation of the longest story ever told, the most successful survival strategy ever developed, the most persistent thread connecting you to every living thing that has ever existed. But here's where our bedtime story takes an intriguing turn, because as we listen to all this cellular chatter, as we marvel at the ancient wisdom encoded in every chromosome, a fascinating question begins to emerge. What exactly is DNA trying to accomplish? At first glance, it seems obvious. DNA wants to survive, right? It wants to keep you alive and healthy so that you can live a long, fulfilling life. And certainly, much of what DNA does serves this purpose beautifully. It orchestrates the healing of your wounds, maintains your immune system, keeps your organs functioning in perfect harmony. But the more scientists have studied DNA, the more they've discovered something curious. DNA's primary concern doesn't seem to be your individual survival. It's the survival and replication of DNA itself. Think of it this way. Imagine you're a passenger in a car, and gradually you realize that the car has its own destination in mind. The car keeps you comfortable, plays your favorite music, adjusts the temperature just right. But ultimately, it's going where it wants to go, not necessarily where you thought you were headed. This is the heart of what scientists call the selfish gene theory. The idea that DNA, in its own molecular way, is primarily concerned with making copies of itself. You, with all your hopes and dreams and fears and joys, you're the sophisticated vehicle that DNA has designed to carry it safely into the future. Now, before this sounds too cold or calculating, let me paint this picture a bit differently. Imagine DNA as the most patient, most dedicated passenger you could ever have. It's been riding along with life for 4 billion years, learning everything there is to know about survival. And what it's learned is remarkable. The best way to survive isn't to be selfish in the cruel sense, but to create vehicles like you that are capable of love, cooperation, creativity, and wonder. DNA has discovered that beings who can feel empathy are more likely to survive in groups. It's learned that creatures capable of curiosity are better at solving problems. It's figured out that organisms that can experience joy and beauty are more motivated to keep living, to keep exploring, to keep making copies of that precious genetic information. So in a very real sense, every emotion you feel, every connection you make, every moment of awe you experience when you look up at the stars, these might all be DNA's way of ensuring its own survival. But what a beautiful way to survive. DNA has learned that the best vehicles for carrying genetic information into the future are conscious, loving, wondering beings. Your DNA has, in effect, learned to drive, and it's become quite a sophisticated driver over the millennia. It knows exactly when to release stress hormones to help you respond to danger. It knows how to flood your system with oxytocin when you hold someone you love. It orchestrates the complex dance of neurotransmitters that creates the experience of falling asleep, and the equally complex dance that brings you back to consciousness each morning. But here's what makes this truly fascinating. DNA has become so good at creating conscious vehicles that you and I can now have conversations like this one. We can wonder about our own genetic heritage. We can question the very molecules that made our questioning possible. As you breathe in and out right now, slowly, calmly, billions of these microscopic conversations are happening inside you. Your DNA is receiving reports from throughout your body, processing information about your environment, making countless tiny adjustments to keep this incredible biological machine running smoothly. In your lungs, DNA is coordinating the production of proteins that help capture oxygen and release carbon dioxide. In your brain, it's managing the delicate chemistry that allows you to process these words, to form mental images, to feel whatever emotions this conversation might be stirring up. In your heart, it's maintaining the steady rhythm that has been your most faithful companion since before you were born. And perhaps most remarkably, your DNA is right now coordinating the activities that will help you transition from wakefulness into sleep. It knows exactly which hormones to release, which brain waves to slow down, which muscles to relax. It's been preparing for this moment all day, adjusting your internal clock, building up the right balance of chemicals to help you drift peacefully into dreams. But what dreams might DNA have? What whispered conversations happen in your cells while you sleep? What ancient memories surface in the quiet hours of the night? These are the questions that will guide us deeper into our exploration tonight. Because if DNA truly has its own agenda, if these ancient molecules are engaged in their own form of thinking, their own form of planning, then what are they whispering to each other in the cellular darkness? Let's venture further into this microscopic mystery, shall we? Let's explore what these ancient molecules might be saying to each other as they carry forward the most persistent, most successful experiment in the history of our planet. The experiment of being alive, of being conscious, of being capable of wonder. In our next chapter, we'll discover how DNA might be the ultimate strategist, a molecular mastermind that's been playing the longest game ever conceived, with moves so subtle and sophisticated that we're only just beginning to understand them. We'll explore how your DNA might be influencing not just your physical form, but your emotions, your relationships, even your sense of purpose and meaning. But for now, just rest in this moment. Feel the ancient conversation happening in every cell. Marvel at the fact that you are both the product of this 4 billion-year experiment and its most conscious participant. You are the universe's way of wondering about itself, DNA's way of contemplating its own existence. The whispers in your cells continue, and we're just beginning to learn their language. Welcome back to our journey through the hidden world within you. I hope you're settling in comfortably. Perhaps your breathing has slowed a little. Your muscles have begun to release the tension of the day. As we continue our exploration tonight, we're going to venture into what might be the most sophisticated strategy game ever played, one that's been unfolding for 4 billion years, with moves so subtle and far-reaching that we humans have only recently begun to glimpse the complexity of the rules. Where are you listening from tonight? Are you tucked safely in bed, watching shadows dance on your ceiling? Or maybe you're curled up in a favorite chair, letting the darkness outside your window remind you of the vast cosmos we're all part of. Wherever you are, know that as you listen, every cell in your body is participating in this ancient game. A game where DNA is both the player and the prize, the strategist and the strategy itself. Imagine, if you will, the most patient chess master who ever lived. Not a human chess master, but something far more persistent, far more calculating. This player doesn't think in terms of minutes or hours, or even years. This player thinks in geological time, millions and millions of years per move. Each decision ripples forward through countless generations, each strategy tested against the harsh realities of survival, refined and perfected over eons. This is your DNA, and it has been playing the longest, most complex game of strategy ever conceived. Every piece on the board, every gene, every protein, every cellular mechanism has been positioned with exquisite care over billions of moves. And here's the truly remarkable part. You are not just a piece in this game. You are the most sophisticated piece DNA has ever created, capable of consciousness, of choice, of wonder, and yet still, in ways both beautiful and sometimes unsettling, serving DNA's ancient strategy. Let's consider your eyes for a moment. Those windows to your soul, as poets have called them. DNA spent millions of years perfecting the ability to see. It started with simple, light-sensitive cells in ancient organisms, just barely able to detect the difference between day and night. But DNA was patient. It refined this ability over countless generations, developing lenses, adjusting focus, adding color vision, creating the intricate neural networks that allow you not just to see, but to recognize faces, to appreciate beauty, to read the emotions in another person's expression. But why? Why did DNA invest so much evolutionary energy in giving you such exquisite vision? The cynical answer might be simple survival. Better vision means better hunting, better predator avoidance, better mate selection. But the deeper truth is more elegant. DNA discovered that creatures with rich visual experiences were more motivated to keep living, more likely to form social bonds, more successful at navigating complex environments. Your ability to be moved to tears by a sunset, to feel your heart skip when you see someone you love, to lose yourself in the play of light on water, these aren't accidental byproducts of having good eyesight. These are features, not bugs, in DNA's grand design. DNA learned that beings capable of experiencing beauty were more successful at the game of survival and reproduction. Consider your capacity for music. No other creature on Earth has developed such a sophisticated relationship with organized sound. Your DNA has wired your brain to respond to rhythm, melody, and harmony in ways that can literally change your brain chemistry, alter your mood, even synchronize your heartbeat with others around you. But from an evolutionary perspective, this seems almost frivolous. Music doesn't help you hunt mammoths, or avoid predators, or find fresh water. Or does it? DNA, in its infinite patience, discovered something profound. Beings who could make music together were more likely to cooperate, more likely to form stable communities, more likely to share resources and protect each other's children. The mother humming to her baby, the warriors singing before battle, the lovers sharing a song. All of these musical moments serve DNA's deeper strategy of creating strong social bonds that increase survival odds. Your DNA has been playing a game so sophisticated that every seemingly random quirk of human nature might actually serve a hidden purpose. Your tendency to form habits? That's DNA's way of making energy-efficient decisions that have worked before. Your capacity for righteous anger when you see injustice? That's DNA's investment in creating social systems that protect the group. Even your ability to laugh, that strange, uniquely human response to incongruity, might be DNA's way of diffusing tension and strengthening social bonds. But here's where the game becomes truly complex. Sometimes what's good for DNA's long-term strategy isn't necessarily good for you as an individual. DNA is playing for the survival of genetic information across geological time. You're trying to get through Tuesday with some measure of happiness and meaning. These goals often align beautifully, but sometimes they conflict in ways that can feel deeply mysterious. Why do you sometimes feel anxious about things that pose no real threat? Because your DNA is still running software designed for ancient environments where most novel situations were potentially dangerous. Why do you crave foods that aren't good for you? Because your DNA remembers times when calories were scarce, and sugar and fat were precious resources to be consumed whenever available. Your DNA is like a time traveler, carrying ancient wisdom that doesn't always translate perfectly to the modern world. It's running strategies that were perfected over millions of years. But the game board has changed dramatically in just the last few thousand years. The result is a fascinating tension between your ancient genetic heritage and your contemporary human experience. Now, let's talk about perhaps DNA's most elaborate and beautiful trick, romantic love. Ah, love, that feeling that poets have called the closest thing to magic we experience as humans. The way time seems to stop when you first see someone special. The way your heart races, your palms sweat, your usually articulate mind reduces itself to stammering nonsense. The way you find yourself thinking about this person at the most random moments. The way their happiness becomes mysteriously important to your own. We call it falling in love, as if it's something that happens to us, something beyond our control. And perhaps that's exactly right. Perhaps you don't fall in love. Perhaps love is something that DNA does to you. If romantic love is DNA's most elaborate trick, then parental love might be its most powerful programming. The transformation that occurs when humans become parents is so dramatic, so complete, that it's almost like watching someone become an entirely different species. One day, you're a person primarily concerned with your own needs, your own sleep, your own goals. The next day, you're willing to sacrifice everything: comfort, resources, sleep, even your life, for a tiny human who can't even hold up their own head. What happened? Did you suddenly become a more generous, more selfless person? Or did DNA activate some of the most sophisticated behavioral programming ever evolved? Let's watch this transformation unfold. During pregnancy, DNA begins flooding the expectant mother's system with hormones that literally reshape her brain. Progesterone and oxytocin alter neural pathways, making her more sensitive to infant cues, more motivated to prepare a safe nesting environment, more focused on the welfare of the developing child. Her priorities reorganize themselves without her conscious decision. Suddenly, foods she used to love might make her nauseated, while foods rich in the nutrients needed for fetal development become irresistibly appealing. DNA is preparing her for the most demanding job she'll ever have, and it's not taking any chances. It's rewiring her brain for vigilance, for responsiveness, for the kind of fierce protectiveness that will ensure this genetic investment survives and thrives. But the truly remarkable programming happens after birth. When a mother first holds her newborn, when she looks into those tiny eyes, DNA releases a neurochemical cascade so powerful it can override years of personality patterns. The same oxytocin system that creates romantic bonding now creates something even stronger, a connection so intense that the infant's cries will wake her from the deepest sleep, so immediate that she can distinguish her baby's voice from a room full of crying children, so fierce that she'll instinctively position her body between her child and any perceived threat. And fathers? DNA has a program for them too. When men hold their newborn children, testosterone levels drop while oxytocin and prolactin surge. This chemical shift reduces aggression and competitiveness, while increasing nurturing behavior and protective instincts. DNA is essentially converting warriors into caregivers, predators into protectors. But here's what makes DNA's parental programming so sophisticated. It doesn't just create love and protectiveness. It creates patience for sleep deprivation, tolerance for chaos, the ability to find joy in the smallest milestones. DNA understands that raising human children successfully requires years of intensive investment, so it has developed chemical rewards for every aspect of parenting. The first smile, the first word, the first tentative steps each of these moments triggers a release of dopamine and oxytocin that makes all the sleepless nights and worry worthwhile. DNA has learned to make the long, difficult process of child rearing feel not just tolerable, but deeply meaningful and rewarding. Consider the extraordinary sacrifice that parents make without even thinking about it. New mothers and fathers routinely give up sleep, that fundamental biological need, for months or even years. They reorganize their entire lives around the needs of someone who can't reciprocate, can't express gratitude, can't even acknowledge their sacrifice. From a purely rational perspective, this seems almost insane. But DNA doesn't care if you're tired. DNA doesn't care if your career plans have been derailed, or your social life has disappeared, or your bank account has been drained by endless baby supplies. DNA has invested too much in this next generation to let you quit now. It will flood your system with enough love hormones to keep you functioning, enough protective instincts to keep you vigilant, enough joy chemicals to make you willing to do it all again tomorrow. And remarkably, most parents find themselves grateful for this programming. The love they feel for their children is so intense, so fulfilling, that they can't imagine life without it. DNA has created a system where serving its reproductive agenda feels like the most meaningful thing a human can do. But DNA's parental programming extends far beyond the immediate parent-child bond. It influences grandparents, aunts and uncles, even complete strangers who feel protective toward children. DNA has learned that children are more likely to survive in communities where multiple adults are invested in their welfare, so it has installed various forms of nurturing instincts throughout human societies. Your DNA doesn't just want you to have children, it wants those children to survive, thrive, and eventually reproduce themselves. So it has programmed you not just for the intense early years of parenting, but for decades of continued investment. The worry you feel when your teenager is out past curfew, the pride that swells when your adult child achieves something meaningful, the way grandparents light up around their grandchildren, all of this serves DNA's long-term strategy of ensuring genetic continuity across generations. But if DNA is so concerned with survival, if it has spent 4 billion years perfecting strategies for staying alive and reproducing, then why do we age? Why does this master strategist allow its most sophisticated vehicles us to deteriorate and eventually die? It seems like a flaw in the system, a cruel irony, that the very DNA that programs us to love life also programs us to lose it. This question puzzled scientists for decades. If aging serves no evolutionary purpose, why hasn't DNA found a way to prevent it? Some creatures, like certain jellyfish and trees, seem to have solved the aging problem. They can potentially live forever, given the right conditions. So why didn't DNA give us the same gift? The answer, it turns out, reveals just how sophisticated DNA's long-term thinking really. Island aging isn't a flaw in DNA's strategy, it's a feature. A carefully calibrated feature that serves multiple purposes in DNA's 4 billion year game plan. First, there's the simple mathematics of resource allocation. In a world with limited resources, it makes evolutionary sense for older individuals to eventually make way for younger ones. The genes that survive are those that can successfully compete for resources, and sometimes the best way to ensure your gene's survival is to invest in the next generation rather than maintaining the current one indefinitely. But DNA's strategy is far more sophisticated than simple resource competition. Consider what scientists call the grandmother hypothesis, the idea that aging, particularly in humans, serves a crucial function in child rearing and knowledge transfer. Human children require an extraordinarily long period of care and education compared to other species. Not just physical care, but cultural learning, language, social skills, accumulated wisdom about everything from which plants are edible to how to navigate complex social relationships. This information is too valuable to lose when parents die or become too busy with new children to pass it on effectively. So DNA developed a remarkable solution: grandparents. By programming humans to live well beyond their reproductive years, DNA created a class of individuals who are no longer focused on producing their own offspring, but are deeply invested in the success of their descendants. Grandparents have the time, patience, and accumulated wisdom to provide specialized care and education that busy parents might not be able to offer. Your DNA has learned that children raised with grandparent involvement have better survival rates, better social skills, and more cultural knowledge. The wisdom of elders, their memories of past challenges, their accumulated understanding of human nature, their patient availability for teaching and nurturing turns out to be such a valuable resource that DNA has programmed us to maintain older individuals specifically for this purpose. But there's an even deeper layer to DNA's aging strategy. By limiting individual lifespan, DNA ensures that genetic information continues to be mixed and recombined through sexual reproduction. If individuals lived forever, the gene pool would eventually become static. New genetic combinations would be rare, adaptation to changing environments would slow down, and evolution itself would grind to a halt. Aging, in this view, is DNA's way of ensuring its own continued evolution. By cycling through generations, DNA maintains its ability to adapt, to experiment, to respond to new challenges and opportunities. Death, painful as it is for conscious beings like us, serves life by keeping genetic information dynamic and responsive. There's something almost poetic about this realization. DNA has learned that the best way to achieve immortality isn't to make individual organisms live forever, but to create an endless chain of temporary, conscious beings, each one carrying forward the accumulated wisdom of billions of years while adding their own unique experiences to the mix. You are both temporary and eternal, temporary as an individual, but eternal as a carrier of genetic information that stretches back to the very beginnings of life on Earth. Your DNA will outlive you, carried forward in your children, or in the children of your siblings, or in the broader human family of which you're a part. And perhaps this is DNA's most profound gift to conscious beings like us. The knowledge that we are part of something larger than ourselves, something that transcends individual mortality. When you hold a newborn child, you're looking at the future of genetic information that connects you to every human who has ever lived. When you share knowledge with someone younger, you're participating in the same process that has allowed human culture to accumulate and evolve over thousands of generations. Maybe aging is DNA's way of saying, thank you for your service. Thank you for carrying this genetic heritage forward, for adding your unique contribution to the great human experiment, for being conscious and curious and capable of wonder. Your individual role in the cosmic story may be temporary, but the story itself continues, enriched by everything you've experienced, everything you've learned, everything you've contributed to the great conversation of life. As you listen to these words tonight, perhaps feeling the day's fatigue settling into your bones, consider that this too is part of DNA's ancient wisdom, the need for rest, for sleep, for the daily cycle of consciousness and dreams. This isn't a weakness or limitation, but a sophisticated system for processing experiences, consolidating memories, and preparing for whatever tomorrow might bring. Your DNA knows that conscious beings need time to integrate their experiences, to allow the day's lessons to settle into long-term memory, to give the body time to repair and restore itself. Sleep isn't time lost from living. It's an essential part of the process of being alive, of being conscious, of being the kind of sophisticated biological vehicle that DNA has spent billions of years learning to create. But what happens during those hours of sleep? What conversations continue in your cells while your conscious mind rests? What ancient programs run their course while you dream? In our next chapter, we'll explore the hidden influences, the other players in DNA's grand strategy that most of us never even realize exist. We'll discover that you're not just carrying human DNA, but hosting an entire ecosystem of genetic information with its own agendas, its own strategies, its own forms of molecular conversation. We'll explore how the bacteria in your gut might be influencing your mood, how ancient viruses woven into your chromosomes might still be active, how your genetic heritage is far more complex and mysterious than anyone imagined. But for now, rest in the knowledge that aging itself is a form of wisdom, that your individual journey is part of an unbroken chain stretching back to the very origins of life. You are both the product of DNA's longest experiment and its most conscious participant, temporary and eternal, individual and universal, a unique note in the most complex symphony ever composed. The evolutionary puppet master continues its ancient work, weaving together past and future, individual and species, consciousness and cosmos, in patterns so intricate and beautiful that we're only just beginning to glimpse their true complexity. Welcome back to our journey through the hidden universe within you. I hope you're finding yourself more relaxed now, perhaps feeling that gentle heaviness in your limbs that signals your body's readiness for rest. As we continue tonight, we're about to discover that the story of DNA's influence over your life is far more complex and far more fascinating than we've explored so far. Where are you right now? Maybe you're watching the last light fade from your window, or perhaps you're already surrounded by the comforting darkness of night. Wherever you are, I want you to know that as you listen to these words, you're not just experiencing the thoughts and dreams of your own genetic heritage. You're part of a vast, interconnected web of biological influences that stretches far beyond what we typically think of as human. Tonight, we're going to meet the hidden influences, the secret players in DNA's grand strategy that most of us never even realize exist. We'll discover that your body is not just a vehicle for human DNA, but a walking ecosystem hosting trillions of other genetic agendas, each with their own sophisticated strategies for survival and influence. For most of the 20th century, scientists thought they had DNA figured out. It was like a recipe book, they said. A fixed set of instructions written in your cells that determined everything from your eye color to your disease susceptibilities. You inherited half your recipes from your mother, half from your father, and that was that. Your genetic destiny was set at conception. But then came one of the most profound plot twists in the history of biology, the discovery of epigenetics. Suddenly, DNA wasn't just a fixed recipe book, it was more like a responsive screenplay, capable of rewriting itself based on the experiences of its actors. Imagine, if you will, a script that could change its dialogue depending on the theatre where it's performed, the season when it's staged, even the mood of the audience. Imagine characters whose personalities could shift based on whether they've recently experienced tragedy or joy, stress or safety, abundance or scarcity. This is what epigenetics revealed. Your DNA is not a rigid instruction manual, but a dynamic, responsive system that's constantly listening to your environment and adjusting its expression accordingly. The mechanism is elegant in its simplicity. Think of your DNA as a vast library of books, your genes. But not all books are meant to be read at the same time, or in the same circumstances. Epigenetics works like a team of librarians, moving through the stacks and deciding which books to leave open on the reading tables, which ones to bookmark for later, and which ones to keep locked away in the archives. These molecular librarians, methylation patterns, histone modifications, and other epigenetic markers can literally turn genes on or off based on what's happening in your life right now. Experiencing chronic stress? Certain genes involved in inflammation might get turned up, while genes involved in immune function might get turned down. Living in an environment rich with learning opportunities? Genes involved in neural plasticity might become more active, while genes associated with cellular maintenance might dial down their activity. But here's where the story becomes truly extraordinary. These epigenetic changes don't necessarily reset when you die. Some of them can be passed on to your children, and even your grandchildren. Your experiences, your traumas, your triumphs, your adaptations to specific environments can literally rewrite your genetic expression in ways that echo forward through generations. Consider this remarkable possibility. Your grandmother's experiences during a time of war or famine might have caused epigenetic changes in her DNA that affected how her body responded to stress, processed nutrients, or regulated emotions. Some of those changes might have been passed to your mother, and some of them might now be influencing how your own genes express themselves. That feeling you get sometimes, that inexplicable anxiety about situations that aren't actually dangerous, that might not just be your personal psychology, it might be your grandmother's wartime vigilance, written into your genetic expression through mechanisms we're only beginning to understand. That particular way you respond to certain foods, certain stresses, certain social situations. You might be experiencing not just your own genetic heritage, but the accumulated adaptive responses of your ancestors to challenges they faced decades before you were born. This means you're not just carrying DNA, you're carrying stories. Molecular stories of survival, adaptation, resilience, and trauma that have been passed down through generations like an invisible inheritance. Your cells contain not just the genetic potential for who you might become, but the epigenetic memories of who your ancestors had to become in order to survive their particular circumstances. And the plot twist continues. You're not just inheriting these epigenetic patterns, you're actively creating them. Every major experience in your life, every period of sustained stress or joy, every adaptation to new environments is potentially writing new instructions into your genetic expression. The way you respond to the challenges and opportunities of your lifetime might influence not just your own health and behavior, but the genetic expression of your children and grandchildren. You are simultaneously the inheritor of ancient adaptive wisdom and the author of new genetic stories that will ripple forward into the future. Your DNA is not just following a script written billions of years ago, it's improvising, responding, adapting to the unique circumstances of your particular life in ways that might echo through generations yet unborn. This discovery has revolutionized our understanding of inheritance, of trauma, of resilience, and of hope. It suggests that we're not prisoners of our genetic heritage, but active participants in an ongoing conversation between genes and environment that has been unfolding since the beginning of life itself. Now, let's zoom out from the nucleus of your cells to consider something even more mind-bending. You are not just one organism with one set of genetic agendas. You are, in fact, a walking ecosystem, a complex community of trillions of microorganisms, each with their own DNA, their own survival strategies, their own forms of molecular communication. Welcome to your microbiome, the vast universe of bacteria, fungi, viruses, and other microbes that call your body home. In terms of sheer numbers, these microbial inhabitants actually outnumber your human cells. You are, quite literally, more microbe than human, at least from a cellular perspective. Picture this. Right now, in your gut, there's a bustling metropolis of bacterial life more complex than any human city. Different neighborhoods host different microbial communities. The acidic environment of your stomach selects for certain hardy species, while the alkaline conditions further down your digestive tract favor entirely different populations. These bacterial communities have their own social structures, their own trade networks, their own forms of cooperation and competition. And here's what makes this truly fascinating. These microbes don't just live in you passively. They're active participants in your biology, producing chemicals that influence everything from your immune system to your brain chemistry. They have their own genetic agendas, their own survival strategies, and they've learned to influence their host you in ways that serve their own reproductive interests. Consider your cravings. That sudden desire for chocolate that hits you at midnight, that inexplicable urge for salty snacks when you're stressed. That way certain foods just sound good to you. At particular moments, whose idea is that really? Your conscious mind might think it's making these decisions, but emerging research suggests that your gut bacteria might be influencing your food preferences in ways that serve their own nutritional needs. Different bacterial species thrive on different nutrients. Some prefer simple sugars, others favor complex fibers, still others do best with certain types of fats or proteins. And these bacterial communities have evolved sophisticated ways of communicating their preferences to your brain. They can produce neurotransmitters, influence hormone levels, and send signals through the vagus nerve, that major communication highway between your gut and your brain. When the sugar-loving bacteria in your gut are running low on fuel, they might ramp up production of chemicals that make sweet foods seem irresistibly appealing. When your fiber-loving bacteria need more complex carbohydrates, they might influence your brain chemistry in ways that make whole grains and vegetables suddenly sound appealing. Your gut bacteria have essentially learned to hack your decision-making process. They're like tiny lobbyists, each species advocating for the dietary choices that would best serve their own reproductive interests. And they're remarkably good at it. Most of the time, you experience their influence not as external manipulation, but as your own authentic desires and preferences. But the microbial influence extends far beyond food cravings. These bacterial communities produce a significant portion of your body's serotonin, that crucial neurotransmitter associated with mood, sleep, and overall well-being. They influence your immune system's development and function. They even affect your stress responses and anxiety levels. Some researchers now believe that certain forms of depression and anxiety might be partly microbial in nature, the result of imbalanced bacterial communities producing the wrong mix of neurotransmitters and inflammatory signals. The phrase gut feeling takes on new meaning when you realize that your gut is literally sending chemical messages to your brain that influence your emotional state and decision-making processes. And here's where the microbial conspiracy gets truly sophisticated. These bacteria can sense what's happening in your external environment and adjust their chemical production accordingly. When you're stressed, they might produce different compounds than when you're relaxed. When you're in a social situation, they might influence your neurotransmitter levels in ways that affect your confidence and social behavior. Your microbiome, in other words, is not just along for the ride, it's an active participant in your psychological and emotional life. These trillions of microscopic passengers have their own investment in your success and survival because your well-being directly affects their own reproductive opportunities. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of your microbial community is how personalized it island. Your particular collection of gut bacteria is as unique as your fingerprint, shaped by where you were born, how you were fed as an infant, where you've lived, what you've eaten, who you've kissed, what antibiotics you've taken, and countless other environmental factors. This means that the hidden microbial influences on your mood, your cravings, your immune responses, and your behavior are uniquely yours. Your bacterial communities have co-evolved with you throughout your lifetime, learning to thrive in the particular environment of your body, adapting to your lifestyle and dietary habits. You and your microbes are not just coexisting, you're collaborating in ways so intimate and sophisticated that the boundary between you and them becomes almost meaningless. You are a walking ecosystem, a complex negotiation between human genetic interests and microbial genetic interests that somehow results in the unified experience of being you. But the microbial inhabitants of your body are just the beginning of this story. Hidden within your very DNA, woven into the genetic code that makes you uniquely human, are the molecular fossils of ancient viral infections that occurred millions of years ago in your evolutionary ancestors. These aren't current infections, they're genetic hitchhikers that have become permanent passengers in the human genome. Scientists estimate that about 8% of human DNA actually comes from ancient retroviruses that inserted themselves into our genetic code so long ago that they've become part of what it means to be human. Let that sink in for a moment. Nearly 1/10 of your genetic heritage comes not from your human ancestors, but from viruses that infected early mammals tens of millions of years ago. These viral sequences have been copied and passed down through countless generations, becoming so integrated into human DNA that they're now an essential part of human biology. Some of these ancient viral genes now serve crucial functions in human development. Remarkably, certain viral proteins that originally evolved to help viruses break through cell membranes have been repurposed by human DNA to help form the placenta during pregnancy. The ability of human mothers to nourish their developing babies depends, in part, on genetic innovations that were originally developed by ancient viruses for entirely different purposes. Think about the beautiful irony of this. Viruses, which we typically think of as dangerous invaders, have actually contributed essential genetic tools that make human reproduction possible. DNA, in its infinite adaptability, has learned to incorporate useful innovations regardless of their source. Even enemies can become allies given enough evolutionary time. But these viral hitchhikers aren't necessarily inactive passengers. Some research suggests that certain ancient viral sequences can still be activated under specific conditions during times of stress, infection, or major developmental changes. The genetic ghosts of ancient infections might still be participating in the ongoing conversation of your cellular biology. This means that part of what makes you uniquely you, your genetic responses to stress, your immune system's particular patterns, even aspects of your personality and behavior might be influenced by viral genes that entered your lineage millions of years before your species even existed. You are, quite literally, a living museum of every microscopic encounter in your evolutionary history. Every successful adaptation to viral infection, every incorporation of useful genetic material from other organisms, every molecular innovation that helped your ancestors survive and reproduce, all of it is preserved in the genetic archives of your cells. Your DNA doesn't just carry the history of human evolution, it carries the history of life's constant negotiation with viruses, bacteria, and other microorganisms. You are the product not just of human genetic innovation, but of countless microscopic collaborations, competitions, and incorporations that have been shaping life on Earth for billions of years. And this viral heritage continues to evolve. Every viral infection you experience, every immune response your body mounts, every adaptation your cells make to microbial challenges, all of this becomes part of your ongoing genetic story. Some of these adaptations might even be passed on to your children through epigenetic mechanisms, adding new chapters to the ancient conversation between human biology and viral innovation. You are not a fixed genetic entity, but a dynamic, ongoing conversation between human DNA and the vast microbial world that surrounds and inhabits you. Every breath you take brings new microorganisms into your body. Every meal introduces new bacterial communities. Every social interaction involves the exchange of microbial passengers between people. Tonight, we're going to explore the possibility that consciousness, rather than being separate from genetic programming, might actually be DNA's greatest innovation, a biological technology so advanced, so seamless, that it creates the perfect illusion of independence, while serving ancient molecular agendas that stretch back billions of years. Let's begin with the biggest question of all. Are you thinking these thoughts, or are these thoughts thinking you? When you make a decision whether to have coffee or tea, whether to call a friend, whether to stay up late or go to sleep early, who or what is actually making that choice? For most of human history, this question seemed simple. You have a mind, a consciousness, a sense of self that observes the world and makes decisions based on reason, emotion, and personal preference. You are the author of your own thoughts, the director of your own actions, the captain of your own ship, sailing through the ocean of life. But modern neuroscience has revealed something far more complex and, perhaps, more beautiful. The experience of consciousness, that seamless sense of being a unified self-making, deliberate choices, might actually be a sophisticated construction created by unconscious processes that operate far below the level of awareness. Consider what happens when you decide to move your hand. It feels like you first have the conscious intention to move, and then your hand moves in response to your will. But brain imaging studies have shown something remarkable. The neural activity that initiates hand movement begins several hundred milliseconds before you become consciously aware of your intention to move. Your brain decides to move your hand before you decide to move your hand. This doesn't mean you don't have free will, but it does suggest that consciousness might not be the author of your actions so much as the narrator of actions that have already been initiated by unconscious processes. Your sense of being in control might be a story that consciousness tells about events that are already unfolding at deeper levels of biological processing. And here's where DNA's potential deception becomes truly sophisticated. What if consciousness evolved not to control behavior, but to create a sense of ownership over behaviors that serve genetic agendas? What if the experience of choice is actually a way of making genetically programmed behaviors feel like personal decisions? Think about falling in love. The experience feels intensely personal, deeply meaningful, uniquely yours. You feel like you're choosing this person, deciding to open your heart, making a conscious commitment to care about someone else's well-being. But we've already explored how romantic attraction might be orchestrated by DNA through sophisticated neurochemical processes that operate far below conscious awareness. What if consciousness serves as a kind of PR department for genetic programming? What if its job is to create compelling narratives that make genetically advantageous behaviors feel like authentic personal choices? You don't experience falling in love as, "My DNA is flooding my brain with bonding chemicals to increase the odds of successful reproduction." You experience it as, "I am choosing to love this person because of who they are and how they make me feel." The beauty of this potential deception is that it allows DNA's agenda to be fulfilled while maintaining your sense of agency and authenticity. You get to experience the joy of choice, the satisfaction of personal agency, the meaning that comes from feeling like the author of your own life, even if, at some deeper level, you're participating in genetic programs that have been refined over millions of years. But perhaps deception isn't the right word. Perhaps consciousness represents a kind of evolutionary partnership between genetic programming and individual experience. DNA has learned that conscious beings are more effective vehicles for genetic survival than unconscious ones. A creature that can plan, imagine, create meaning, and make complex social calculations is more likely to survive and reproduce successfully than a creature operating purely on instinct. So DNA created consciousness not to deceive you, but to enhance your capabilities as a genetic vehicle. The experience of free will might be real and important, just not in the way we typically think about it. You may not be free from genetic influence, but you are free to participate consciously in genetic strategies that align with your deepest human needs for meaning, connection, and purpose. Now, let's explore one of the most sophisticated and sometimes problematic aspects of DNA's hidden influence: the ancient stress response network that's been hardwired into your biology over millions of years of evolution. Your DNA has spent countless generations perfecting your ability to detect and respond to danger. This system is so fundamental, so deeply embedded in your biology, that it operates largely below the level of conscious awareness. The moment your brain detects a potential threat, whether real or imagined, an incredibly complex cascade of genetic programming springs into action. Within milliseconds of perceiving danger, your DNA activates what scientists call the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, a sophisticated communication network linking your brain, your hormone-producing glands, and your cellular responses throughout your body. Stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline flood your system, your heart rate increases, your breathing deepens, your muscles tense for action. This is DNA's emergency response system, refined over millions of years to help your ancestors survive encounters with predators, natural disasters, and other immediate physical threats. And it's remarkably effective when you actually need to run from a tiger or fight off an attacker. This genetic programming can literally save your life. But here's where DNA's ancient wisdom creates a modern problem. Your stress response system was calibrated for a world that no longer exists. The threats that shaped this genetic programming were typically immediate, physical, and short-term. Either you escaped the predator or you didn't. Either you survived the natural disaster or you didn't. The stress response was designed to be activated intensely and briefly, then return to baseline once the immediate danger passed. Modern life, however, presents your ancient stress response system with challenges it was never designed to handle. Chronic work pressure, financial uncertainty, social anxiety, information overload, relationship conflicts. These are not the kinds of clear, immediate, physical threats that your DNA learned to respond to over millions of years of evolution. Your stress response system can't tell the difference between a charging lion and a difficult email from your boss. Your DNA interprets both as potential threats that require immediate physiological preparation for fight or flight. The same genetic programming that helped your ancestors survive genuine physical dangers now activates in response to abstract, ongoing, psychological stresses that can't be resolved through physical action. This creates a fascinating mismatch. You're walking around with the stress response system of a hunter-gatherer, living in the environment of a modern knowledge worker. Your DNA is constantly scanning for threats and finding them everywhere, in traffic jams, in social media posts, in news headlines, in work deadlines, in social situations that trigger ancient fears of rejection or exclusion. The result is that many people live in a state of chronic, low-level stress activation that their genetic programming was never designed to handle. Your DNA keeps waiting for you to either fight the threat or run from it, but instead you sit in meetings, stare at screens, and worry about abstract future possibilities that can't be resolved through physical action. Why do you sometimes feel anxious about situations that aren't actually dangerous? Because your DNA is still running software designed for a world where most novel situations, unexpected sounds, or unfamiliar social dynamics could potentially be life-threatening. Your genetic programming errs on the side of caution, triggering stress responses for situations that might be dangerous, rather than risking the potentially fatal consequence of failing to respond to actual threats. That racing heart when you have to give a presentation? Your DNA is preparing you for what it interprets as a potentially hostile social situation where rejection could mean exile from the group, historically a death sentence for social creatures like humans. That insomnia when you're worried about finances? Your DNA is keeping you alert for threats to your resources, which throughout evolutionary history often meant threats to survival itself. Your anxiety about social media interactions, your stress about news events happening on the other side of the world, your worry about hypothetical future scenarios, all of these represent your ancient genetic programming, trying to protect you from dangers that don't actually require the physiological stress response. But understanding this mismatch between your genetic heritage and your modern environment can actually be liberating. When you realize that your stress responses often represent ancient wisdom being applied to contemporary situations that don't actually require fight or flight preparation, you can begin to work with your genetic programming rather than being overwhelmed by it. Your DNA's stress response system isn't broken, it's just operating in an environment very different from the one it was designed for. Recognizing this allows you to appreciate the protective intentions of your genetic programming while developing conscious strategies for managing stress responses that may not be appropriate for modern challenges. You can honor your DNA's ancient wisdom while also recognizing its limitations. You can appreciate the sophisticated biological systems that have kept your species alive for millions of years, while also developing the conscious awareness needed to navigate a world that changes faster than genetic programming can adapt. As we reach the end of this chapter, take a moment to appreciate the incredible complexity of the hidden influences shaping your experience right now. Your epigenetic patterns are responding to your current environment while carrying forward the adaptive wisdom of your ancestors. Your microbial communities are producing chemicals that influence your mood, your cravings, and your social behavior. Ancient viral sequences woven into your DNA are participating in cellular processes that make your life possible. Your stress response system is constantly scanning for threats and preparing your body for challenges that may or may not require physiological activation. You are not just a human being with human DNA operating in isolation. You are a walking ecosystem, a complex community of genetic interests and influences that somehow coordinate to create the unified experience of being you. You are simultaneously ancient and modern, individual and communal, human and microbial, conscious and unconscious. But if all of these hidden influences are constantly shaping your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, what does that mean for free will? What does it mean for personal responsibility? What does it mean for the choices you make and the life you create? In our next chapter, we'll explore what might be DNA's greatest deceptions, the sophisticated ways that genetic programming creates the experience of choice while potentially serving its own ancient agenda. We'll investigate the beautiful and sometimes unsettling possibility that consciousness itself might be DNA's most elaborate innovation for ensuring its own survival and replication. We'll discover how genetic programming might influence your aesthetic preferences, your social behaviors, your sense of meaning and purpose, and even your concept of time. We'll explore the tension between feeling like the author of your own life and discovering the many ways that ancient molecular conversations might be shaping the story you think you're writing. But for now, rest in the knowledge that you are part of something vast and interconnected, something that connects you not just to other humans, but to the entire community of life on Earth. You are both an individual and an ecosystem, both a temporary arrangement of ancient atoms and a unique participant in the ongoing evolution of consciousness itself. The hidden influencers continue their ancient work, weaving together genetics and environment, individual and community, past and future, in patterns so complex and beautiful that we're only beginning to understand their true significance. Welcome back to this journey through the hidden depths of your biological existence. I hope you're settling even more deeply into rest now, perhaps feeling that wonderful heaviness that comes when the day's tensions begin to dissolve. As we continue tonight, we're approaching what might be the most profound questions of all: the nature of consciousness itself, and the possibility that even your most intimate sense of choice and free will might be part of DNA's most elaborate strategy. Where are you in this moment? Are you aware of your breathing, slow and steady? Can you feel your heartbeat, that faithful rhythm that has accompanied every moment of your life since before you were born? As you rest there, comfortable and safe, consider this. What if everything you think of as you, your preferences, your decisions, your sense of beauty, your social desires, even your experience of consciousness itself, what if all of this is part of DNA's most sophisticated deception? Your consciousness might be both genuinely yours and genuinely serving DNA's agenda. These don't have to be contradictory. DNA has become so sophisticated in its strategy that serving its interests feels like fulfilling your most authentic desires. Now let's explore one of DNA's most elegant deceptions, the experience of beauty. That moment when you see a sunset and feel your breath catch in your throat. The way a particular face can make your heart skip. The inexplicable pleasure you take in certain landscapes, certain forms, certain combinations of color and light and shape. We tend to think of aesthetic appreciation as one of the most purely human, most transcendent aspects of consciousness. Beauty seems to lift us beyond the merely biological, connecting us to something spiritual, meaningful, eternal. But what if your sense of beauty is actually one of DNA's most sophisticated tools for guiding behavior in genetically advantageous directions? Consider the faces you find attractive. Research has shown that across cultures and historical periods, humans tend to find certain facial features beautiful: symmetry, clear skin, features that suggest youth and health, proportions that indicate good genes and reproductive fitness. What we experience as an aesthetic preference might actually be DNA's way of guiding us toward genetically compatible partners. That sunset that takes your breath away, your DNA might have taught you to find it beautiful, because sunsets historically signaled the approach of night, when predators became active and safe shelter became essential. The beauty you experience might be DNA's way of encouraging you to pay attention to environmental conditions that could affect survival. Those rolling hills and distant mountains that feel so peaceful and inviting. DNA might have programmed you to find such landscapes beautiful because they represent the kind of environment where early humans thrived, elevated vantage points for spotting both opportunities and threats, evidence of water sources, diverse ecosystems that could provide varied food sources. The flowers that seem so lovely might appeal to you because they signal the presence of food sources, fruits, and nuts that would ripen later in the season. The green landscapes that feel so restorative might soothe you because green vegetation indicates abundant water and fertile growing conditions. Even your preference for certain weather conditions might reflect genetic programming that helped your ancestors make good survival decisions. But here's what makes DNA's beauty strategy so elegant. It doesn't just guide you toward genetically advantageous choices, it makes those choices feel transcendent, meaningful, deeply satisfying. You don't experience attraction as this person shows genetic markers of reproductive fitness. You experience it as this person is beautiful in a way that moves my soul. You don't experience landscape appreciation as this environment shows good survival characteristics. You experience it as, "This place fills me with peace and wonder." DNA has learned to make survival strategies feel like spiritual experiences, and the beauty trap extends far beyond natural phenomena. The human capacity for art, music, and creative expression might also serve genetic functions that we're only beginning to understand. The ability to create and appreciate art might signal creativity, intelligence, and emotional sophistication, all qualities that would have made someone a desirable partner and valuable community member throughout human evolution. Your appreciation for music might reflect DNA's investment in social bonding, rhythm, and melody that can synchronize groups, create shared emotional experiences, and strengthen the cooperative relationships that increased survival odds for our highly social species. Even your aesthetic preferences in human-made objects might reflect ancient genetic programming. The proportions we find pleasing in architecture, the color combinations that feel harmonious, the forms that seem elegant or powerful, all of these might echo preferences that originally evolved to help humans navigate natural environments successfully. This doesn't diminish the reality or importance of your aesthetic experiences. The beauty you perceive is real. The meaning you derive from it is genuine. The joy it brings is authentic. But it might also be serving genetic agendas in ways so subtle and sophisticated that they enhance rather than diminish your human experience. Perhaps nowhere is DNA's influence more complex and subtle than in the realm of social behavior. Humans are perhaps the most social species on the planet, capable of forming relationships and communities of extraordinary complexity and sophistication. But what if your deepest social needs and behaviors are actually expressions of genetic programming that has been refined over millions of years of evolution? That fundamental need you feel to belong, to be accepted by others, to have your contributions recognized and valued, these might not just be psychological preferences, but genetic imperatives embedded so deeply in your biology that social rejection activates the same neural pathways as physical pain. Throughout human evolution, being excluded from the group was often a death sentence. Humans survived through cooperation, shared resources, and collective defense against threats. An individual cast out from the community faced starvation, predation, and exposure with little chance of survival. So DNA developed powerful programming to make social acceptance feel essential to well-being and social rejection feel like a genuine threat to survival. This is why public speaking can trigger intense anxiety. Your DNA interprets standing alone before a group as a potentially dangerous exposure to judgment that could lead to rejection. This is why social media interactions can have such powerful effects on mood and self-esteem. Your genetic programming can't distinguish between face-to-face social dynamics and digital representations of social approval or disapproval. Your need for social status might also reflect ancient genetic programming. Throughout human history, higher status individuals had better access to resources, safer living conditions, and more opportunities to attract desirable partners. The drive to achieve recognition, to climb social hierarchies, to accumulate markers of success, these might be DNA's way of encouraging behaviors that historically increased reproductive success. But DNA's social programming is far more sophisticated than simple status seeking. It has also created powerful drives toward cooperation, empathy, altruism, and fairness. Research has shown that humans have strong instinctive responses to unfairness, powerful motivations to help others even at personal cost, and sophisticated abilities to read and respond to others' emotional states. Why? Because throughout human evolution, the most successful groups were those that could cooperate effectively, share resources fairly, and support each other through challenges. DNA learned that creatures capable of genuine care for others were more successful in the long run than purely selfish creatures. So it created genetic programming that makes cooperation feel good, that makes helping others intrinsically rewarding, that makes fairness seem like a moral imperative. Your capacity for empathy might be DNA's way of creating beings who can understand and respond to others' needs, increasing group cohesion and mutual support. Your sense of justice might reflect genetic programming that helped early human communities develop stable, cooperative social systems. Your ability to sacrifice personal interests for the good of others might serve DNA's strategy of ensuring that genetic information survives even if particular individuals don't. And now, in the modern world, these ancient social programs are encountering environments they were never designed for. Social media platforms might be hijacking your genetic programming for social recognition and approval, creating addictive loops that trigger ancient reward systems without necessarily providing genuine social connection. The modern emphasis on individual achievement might conflict with genetic programming that evolved for small, cooperative communities where everyone's survival was interdependent. The scale of modern society's millions of strangers living in close proximity might overwhelm social systems that evolved for groups of a few dozen people where everyone knew everyone else. Yet your genetic social programming continues to operate, creating the fundamental human experiences of loneliness and belonging, competition and cooperation, love and jealousy, that shape your daily emotional landscape. You are living with social software designed for ancient environments, trying to find meaning and connection in a world that changes faster than genetic programming can adapt. Perhaps the most profound disconnect between your experience and DNA's agenda lies in the realm of time. You live in human time, days and weeks, months and years, planning for the next vacation or retirement, worrying about next month's bills or next year's goals. But DNA thinks in geological time, operating strategies that span millions of years, playing a game where success is measured across thousands of generations. This creates a fascinating tension at the heart of human existence. Your DNA is essentially immortal. The genetic information in your cells connects you in an unbroken chain to the very first living things on Earth, and potentially extends forward indefinitely into the future. But you, as an individual consciousness, exist for perhaps 8 or 9 decades at most. DNA is playing a game that spans millions of years, developing strategies that might not pay off for thousands of generations. But you're just trying to get through Tuesday with some sense of accomplishment and well-being. This mismatch in time horizons creates some of the most poignant aspects of human experience. Why do you sometimes feel a deep longing for something you can't quite name? Why do certain experiences, holding a newborn baby, watching a sunrise, feeling connected to nature, seem to touch something profound and timeless within you? Perhaps because these moments align your temporary human consciousness with DNA's ancient, ongoing project. Your desire to create something lasting, to leave a legacy, to be remembered after you're gone, these might reflect DNA's deep investment in continuity across time. Your DNA doesn't just want to survive your individual lifetime. It wants to continue the conversation of consciousness, creativity, and cultural evolution that makes humanity its most successful experiment. But this also means that some of your deepest struggles might arise from conflicts between DNA's long-term agenda and your short-term human needs. DNA might program you to take risks that could benefit future generations even if they don't benefit you personally. It might create drives toward exploration, innovation, and reproduction that sometimes conflict with your desire for safety, stability, and personal comfort. The wanderlust you feel sometimes, that restless desire to explore new places and possibilities that might be DNA's way of ensuring that genetic information spreads into new environments, even if it means leaving behind familiar comforts. The creative urge that compels you to make art, write stories, or innovate solutions that might be DNA's investment in cultural evolution, in the creation of ideas and technologies that will benefit future generations. Your occasional dissatisfaction with comfortable circumstances, your tendency to seek new challenges even when things are going well, these might reflect DNA's strategy of continuous adaptation and growth, its refusal to let any situation become too static or predictable. And yet, DNA has also learned that short-term happiness and individual well-being serve its long-term agenda. Conscious beings who feel fulfilled, loved, and purposeful are more successful at survival and reproduction than those who feel miserable and hopeless. So DNA has created programming that can align immediate pleasure with long-term genetic strategy. The joy you feel in deep friendships serves DNA's investment in social cooperation. The satisfaction you get from learning and growing serves DNA's strategy of creating adaptable, innovative beings. The peace you experience in moments of rest and reflection serves DNA's need for beings who can process experiences and make wise decisions. You are both serving DNA's ancient agenda and fulfilling your own authentic human needs. These aren't contradictory, they're complementary aspects of the same sophisticated evolutionary strategy. Let's pause here for a moment. Take a deep breath with me. Feel your chest rise and fall. Notice the air moving in and out of your lungs. Can you sense your heartbeat? That steady rhythm that has been with you since before you were born, that will accompany every moment of your life? Right now, as you listen to these words, billions of cells throughout your body are engaged in the most complex conversation ever evolved. Your DNA is coordinating the activities of your immune system, monitoring your environment for threats and opportunities, managing the delicate chemistry that creates your thoughts and emotions, orchestrating the countless cellular processes that keep you alive and aware. In your gut, trillions of bacteria are producing chemicals that influence your mood. In your brain, ancient viral sequences are participating in the neural networks that create consciousness. Throughout your body, epigenetic patterns inherited from your ancestors are fine-tuning your responses to the environment around you. You are not just a human being having thoughts about DNA. You are DNA's way of thinking about itself. You are consciousness emerging from 4 billion years of molecular experimentation. You are the universe's way of experiencing wonder, of asking questions, of contemplating its own existence. The ancient conversation continues in every cell, in every heartbeat, in every breath. The great deceptions we've explored tonight aren't really deceptions at all. They're invitations into partnership with forces larger and older and more patient than individual human consciousness, forces that have learned to create meaning and beauty and love as strategies for continuation. You are both temporary and eternal, individual and universal, conscious and unconscious, free and determined. You are the most sophisticated vehicle DNA has ever created for exploring possibility, for experiencing beauty, for generating the novel combinations of ideas and emotions that drive evolution forward. As we prepare to continue our journey, rest in the knowledge that every aspect of your experience, every choice you make, every emotion you feel, every moment of wonder you experience participates in the most ancient and ongoing conversation on Earth. The conversation of life contemplating itself, of consciousness emerging from cosmos, of the universe learning to love through beings like you who are capable of both knowing and feeling the magnificent complexity of existence. As you settle deeper into this quiet moment, perhaps feeling your body fully relaxed now, your breathing slow and natural, I want to share something beautiful with you. Everything we've explored tonight about DNA's influence, its ancient strategies, its sophisticated programming, none of this means you're powerless. In fact, quite the opposite might be true. You see, consciousness itself might be DNA's greatest gift to the universe, and also its most rebellious creation. Because in developing beings capable of understanding their own genetic heritage, DNA has created the possibility for something unprecedented in the 4 billion year history of life. Conscious partnership between genetic programming and individual choice. Tonight, we're going to explore the Rebel Alliance, the ways that consciousness can work with, around, and sometimes even against genetic programming to create possibilities that serve both ancient biological wisdom and emerging human values. We're going to discover how DNA's own imperfections create opportunities for innovation, how human culture has become a new form of evolution, and how understanding your genetic heritage might be the first step toward true freedom. Let's begin with a beautiful paradox. DNA's greatest strength might also be its most creative limitation. For all its sophisticated strategies and ancient wisdom, DNA is not perfect. It makes mistakes. Lots of them. In fact, every time DNA replicates itself, which happens billions of times throughout your lifetime, there's a chance for copying errors, for mutations, for genetic information to change in unexpected ways. Most of the time, these mutations are neutral or harmful. They're like typos in an important document. They might not change the meaning, or they might make the text harder to understand. But occasionally, very occasionally, a mutation creates something beneficial, something innovative, something that opens up entirely new possibilities for life. Think about this. Every amazing trait that DNA has developed over 4 billion years, the ability to see, to think, to feel emotion, to experience beauty, to form social bonds, all of these started as mistakes. Random mutations that accidentally created new proteins, new cellular mechanisms, new ways of processing information or responding to the environment. The very consciousness you're using right now to contemplate these ideas exists because DNA made countless beneficial mistakes over millions of years. Your capacity for language, for abstract thought, for imagination, these are all the products of genetic errors that happen to be extraordinarily useful. DNA's imperfections are not bugs in the system, they're features. They're the source of creativity, innovation, and adaptation that allows life to respond to changing environments and explore new possibilities. Without mutations, evolution would stop. Life would become static, unchanging, ultimately vulnerable to any environmental shift that required adaptation. But here's what makes this particularly relevant to your life. You are carrying new mutations, new genetic variations that didn't exist in your parents. Some estimates suggest that each human inherits about 100 new mutations, 100 places where their genetic code differs from their parents through random copying errors. Most of these changes are insignificant, but some might be creating entirely new capacities, new ways of processing information, new forms of creativity or resilience. You are not just carrying forward your genetic heritage unchanged, you are participating in the ongoing creative experiment of evolution. You are both the product of DNA's ancient strategies and a testing ground for new genetic possibilities that might benefit future generations. And this genetic creativity extends beyond individual mutations to the larger patterns of human genetic diversity. Every population that has ever existed represents a different experiment in genetic possibility. The genetic variations that allow some people to thrive at high altitudes, or to digest certain foods, or to resist particular diseases, these represent DNA's ongoing exploration of adaptive strategies. Your particular combination of genetic traits, the unique mix of variants you inherited from both parents, has never existed before and will never exist again. You are a one-time experiment in genetic possibility, a unique test of how particular combinations of ancient wisdom and recent innovation might work together. This means that understanding your genetic heritage isn't about discovering your limitations, it's about recognizing your unique potential. Your genetic variations might give you particular strengths, particular ways of processing information, particular forms of resilience or creativity that could benefit not just you, but the entire human community. Now, here's where the story becomes truly remarkable. Humans have become the first species in Earth's history to consciously understand and actively work with their own genetic programming. We're not just subject to genetic influence, we're learning to negotiate with it, to work around it, and sometimes to override it entirely. Consider modern medicine, which is essentially a form of gentle rebellion against some aspects of DNA's agenda. When you take an antibiotic to fight an infection, you're using human intelligence to support your immune system in ways that DNA's original programming might not have anticipated. When doctors perform surgery to repair genetic abnormalities or treat inherited diseases, they're essentially editing the outcomes of genetic programming in real time. Birth control represents perhaps the most direct form of peaceful rebellion against DNA's reproductive agenda. For the first time in evolutionary history, humans can separate sexual pleasure from reproduction, allowing for intimate relationships that serve emotional and social needs without necessarily serving DNA's imperative to create offspring. This represents a conscious choice to prioritize individual human values over genetic programming. Life extension technologies, from basic public health measures to advanced medical interventions, represent another form of rebellion against DNA's aging program. While DNA might be programmed to prioritize reproduction over individual longevity, human consciousness has decided that individual lives have value beyond their reproductive potential. And genetic therapy is perhaps the ultimate form of peaceful rebellion. The ability to actually edit DNA itself, to correct genetic errors, to add new capabilities, or to remove harmful genetic variants. Humans are becoming capable of consciously directing their own genetic evolution rather than leaving it entirely to random mutation and natural selection. But these aren't necessarily conflicts with DNA's deeper agenda. Remember, DNA's ultimate goal is survival and successful adaptation to changing environments. Human intelligence, creativity, and technology represent incredibly sophisticated tools for achieving these goals. In many ways, medical advances and genetic therapies serve DNA's agenda better than natural selection alone ever could. DNA has created beings capable of consciously directing evolution, of making rational decisions about genetic heritage, of developing technologies that can overcome the limitations of purely biological processes. This might be DNA's greatest innovation yet, creating conscious agents who can take responsibility for genetic evolution rather than leaving it entirely to chance. Your ability to make informed choices about your health, your reproduction, your lifestyle based on understanding of genetic influences represents a new form of evolution, conscious evolution, where understanding replaces blind trial and error, where rational choice supplements random mutation. But perhaps the most remarkable form of rebellion against purely genetic constraints is the development of human culture. You see, humans have invented an entirely new form of inheritance that doesn't require DNA at all. The transmission of ideas, skills, stories, and wisdom from one generation to the next through learning, language, and culture. Think about everything you know that didn't come from your genes. The language you speak, the ideas you think with, the skills you've developed, the stories that shape your understanding of the world, all of this represents cultural inheritance that travels at the speed of thought rather than the speed of biological reproduction. You can inherit your grandmother's recipes, her stories, her wisdom about how to navigate life's challenges, and that inheritance travels instantly, completely, without waiting for genetic recombination or biological reproduction. You can learn from people who lived thousands of years ago through their written words, their artistic creations, their accumulated knowledge about how to live well. Cultural evolution moves thousands of times faster than genetic evolution. While genetic change requires generations to accumulate, cultural change can happen within a single lifetime, or even within a single conversation. The smartphone you might be listening to this on contains technologies that represent thousands of years of accumulated cultural learning, all made available to you instantly. This creates fascinating possibilities for human development that go far beyond genetic programming. You can consciously choose which cultural influences to embrace, which ideas to adopt, which values to live by. You can combine wisdom from multiple cultural traditions, create entirely new ways of thinking and living, pass on innovations to future generations without waiting for biological reproduction. And here's what's truly remarkable. Cultural evolution can actually influence genetic evolution through epigenetic mechanisms. The experiences you have, the skills you develop, the stresses you encounter or avoid through cultural adaptations, all of these can create epigenetic changes that might be passed on to your children. Your choice to meditate regularly, to maintain strong social connections, to engage in lifelong learning, to live in environments that support well-being, these cultural decisions can literally change how your genes express themselves, potentially benefiting not just you, but future generations. You are participating in both genetic and cultural evolution simultaneously. You're carrying forward biological heritage, while also creating and transmitting cultural innovations that can benefit everyone, not just your biological descendants. This means that your life has significance beyond your individual genetic contribution. The ideas you develop, the kindness you show others, the problems you solve, the beauty you create, all of this becomes part of the cultural inheritance that shapes human development far into the future. You can be an ancestor to people you'll never meet, not through genetic inheritance but through cultural contribution. The words you speak, the examples you set, the innovations you participate in, these can ripple forward through cultural evolution in ways that benefit countless future generations. As we look toward the future, perhaps the most exciting possibility is not rebellion against genetic programming, but conscious partnership with it. Instead of seeing DNA's agenda as something to overcome or submit to, we might learn to dance with it, to understand its wisdom, while also contributing our own conscious insights to the ongoing conversation of evolution. Understanding DNA's agenda doesn't mean you have to be controlled by it. Instead, it can be the first step toward true freedom, the freedom that comes from understanding the forces that influence you and choosing how to respond to them. When you understand why you feel attracted to certain people, why you crave certain foods, why you respond to stress in particular ways, you can make more conscious choices about how to work with or around these influences. For example, understanding that your stress response system was designed for ancient environments doesn't mean you have to be overwhelmed by modern stressors. Instead, it can help you develop strategies for managing stress that honor your genetic programming while adapting it to contemporary realities. You can create environments and practices that trigger your relaxation responses rather than your stress responses. Understanding that your social needs reflect ancient programming for community survival doesn't mean you have to be controlled by social anxiety or the need for approval. Instead, it can help you create genuine connections that satisfy deep genetic needs for belonging while also serving your conscious values for authentic relationship. Understanding that your aesthetic preferences might reflect genetic programming doesn't diminish the reality of beauty. It enhances it by connecting your personal experience to the vast evolutionary story of which you're a part. The future might hold possibilities for even more conscious collaboration between genetic wisdom and human choice. As we learn more about epigenetics, we might develop practices that can deliberately influence genetic expression in beneficial ways. As we understand more about the microbiome, we might learn to consciously cultivate bacterial communities that support both physical and mental well-being. As genetic technologies advance, we might develop the ability to enhance human capabilities while preserving the essential characteristics that make us human. We might learn to extend healthy lifespan, enhance cognitive abilities, increase resistance to disease, or improve emotional regulation, all while working with rather than against our fundamental genetic nature. But perhaps most importantly, understanding our genetic heritage can help us make wiser choices about how to live both individually and collectively. When we understand that cooperation and empathy are as much a part of our genetic programming as competition and self-interest, we can consciously choose to emphasize the aspects of our nature that serve both individual well-being and collective flourishing. When we understand that our brains are wired for both tribal loyalty and universal compassion, we can choose to expand our sense of tribe to include all of humanity or even all of life on Earth. When we understand that our genetic programming includes both short-term pleasure-seeking and long-term planning, we can make choices that honor both immediate enjoyment and sustainable futures. The key is not to fight against your genetic heritage, but to understand it so well that you can work with it skillfully. DNA has spent 4 billion years learning how to create successful, conscious, adaptable beings. That wisdom is available to you not as a constraint, but as a resource. Perhaps the real question isn't whether DNA has a hidden agenda, but whether we can learn to dance with it. Whether we can honor the ancient wisdom embedded in our cells, while also contributing our own conscious innovations to the ongoing experiment of life. You are not DNA's prisoner or its puppet. You are its most conscious collaborator, its most sophisticated partner in the exploration of what's possible for life in the universe. Your consciousness represents DNA's gift to itself, the ability to understand its own strategies, to make conscious choices about its own future, to participate deliberately in the conversation of evolution. Every choice you make that increases well-being, every act of kindness that strengthens social bonds, every moment of creativity that generates new possibilities, every decision that balances immediate pleasure with long-term sustainability. All of these represent successful collaboration between ancient genetic wisdom and emerging human consciousness. You are both carrying forward the deepest wisdom of life on Earth and creating entirely new possibilities for what conscious beings might become. You are both ancient and utterly new, both determined and completely free, both individual and universal. In our next chapter, we'll zoom out to the cosmic perspective, exploring how your individual journey with genetic programming connects to the largest questions about life, consciousness, and meaning in the universe. We'll discover how DNA's 4 billion-year experiment might be participating in something even larger. The universe's own journey toward greater complexity, greater consciousness, greater capacity for wonder and understanding. But for now, rest in this knowledge. You are not separate from the forces that created you. You are their most conscious expression, their most deliberate continuation, their most hopeful experiment in the possibility of beings who can understand their own existence and choose their own destiny while honoring the wisdom of the ages that made such choice possible. As you rest there now, breathing slowly, feeling the gentle weight of your body against whatever surface supports you, I want to invite you on the most extraordinary journey of perspective we'll take tonight. We're going to zoom out far out beyond the cellular conversations we've been exploring, beyond individual human experience, beyond even our planet, to consider your place in the largest story ever told. The universe's own journey toward consciousness, complexity, and understanding. Are you comfortable? Can you feel that drowsy peace beginning to settle over you? That wonderful heaviness that comes when the day's concerns fade and your mind begins to drift toward rest? Good. Because tonight, as we explore this cosmic perspective, you're going to discover something that might change how you think about everything: your relationship with DNA, your place in the universe, and the profound meaning embedded in the simple fact that you exist, here and now, capable of wonder. You see, the story of DNA's hidden agenda that we've been exploring tonight is actually a chapter in a much larger story: the universe's own 4 billion-year experiment in creating beings capable of understanding their own existence. And you, right here, right now, are the leading edge of that experiment. Let's begin this cosmic journey by following a single thread backward through time. Take any atom in your body, let's say one of the iron atoms flowing through your bloodstream right now, carrying oxygen to your cells. That atom wasn't created in your body, or even on Earth. It was forged in the nuclear furnace of a massive star that lived and died billions of years ago, before our solar system even existed. When that ancient star exhausted its fuel and exploded in a supernova, it scattered iron and other heavy elements across the cosmos. Those atoms drifted through space for eons, before being incorporated into the cloud of gas and dust that eventually became our solar system. Some found their way into the rocky material that formed Earth. Some were absorbed by the first living organisms. Some have been cycling through the biosphere for billions of years, part of countless different creatures before becoming, temporarily, part of you. The DNA in your cells contains carbon atoms that were present at the formation of our galaxy, hydrogen atoms that date back to the first few minutes after the Big Bang. You are, quite literally, made of stardust, not metaphorically, but actually. The very atoms that make up your genetic code have been on a 13 billion-year journey through space and time to arrive at this moment, in this conversation, in your consciousness. But let's zoom in from cosmic time to biological time. The DNA in your cells represents an unbroken chain of inheritance stretching back 4 billion years to the very first living organisms on Earth. Not almost unbroken, completely unbroken. Every single one of your ancestors, going back thousands of generations, millions of generations, hundreds of millions of generations, successfully survived long enough to reproduce. Not one of them failed to pass on genetic information to the next generation. Think about the astronomical odds of your existence. Every one of your ancestors had to survive childhood diseases, find enough food, avoid predators, locate mates, successfully reproduce, and ensure their offspring survive to reproductive age. This had to happen thousands of millions of times in a row, without a single failure, for you to exist. You are the product of the most successful survival strategy in the history of Earth. The DNA in your cells has never been defeated, not once, not ever, in 4 billion years of challenges, catastrophes, mass extinctions, climate changes, and evolutionary pressures. You carry within you the genetic heritage of the ultimate survivors. But here's what makes this even more extraordinary. You're not just connected to your direct human ancestors. You're related, through common ancestry, to every living thing on Earth. The DNA in your cells shares fundamental sequences with the DNA in oak trees, in dolphins, in mushrooms, in bacteria. The genetic code that creates proteins in your body is virtually identical to the genetic code used by every other living organism on the planet. This means that in a very real biological sense, you are related to the redwood trees growing in California, to the whales swimming in the deep ocean, to the mycorrhizal fungi that connect forest root systems in vast underground networks. You share common ancestors with every bird that has ever sung, every flower that has ever bloomed, every creature that has ever drawn breath. The genetic heritage flowing through your bloodstream right now connects you not just to other humans, but to the entire community of life on Earth. You are not separate from nature, you are nature, temporarily arranged in the shape of a person, temporarily conscious, temporarily capable of contemplating your own place in the grand story of life. And this connection isn't just historical, it's ongoing. The oxygen you're breathing right now was produced by plants and algae through photosynthesis. The carbon dioxide you're exhaling will be absorbed by plants and incorporated into their tissues. You are participating, with every breath, in the global circulation of atoms and molecules that connects all living things. The bacteria in your gut are processing nutrients and producing vitamins that your human cells can't make on their own. The plants you ate today donated their stored solar energy to fuel your cellular processes. The water in your body has been part of clouds, rivers, oceans, and countless other living beings before becoming part of you. You exist at the center of a vast web of biological relationships and exchanges that connects you to every ecosystem on the planet. You are not an isolated individual consciousness riding around in a biological machine. You are a temporary focal point in the ongoing conversation of life with itself. But now, let's zoom out even further to consider the possibility that DNA's hidden agenda is actually part of something even grander, the universe's own journey towards self-awareness. What if consciousness itself isn't an accident, but the inevitable result of matter becoming complex enough to understand its own existence? Think about this remarkable progression. For the first several billion years after the Big Bang, the universe consisted primarily of hydrogen and helium gas drifting through empty space. No stars, no planets, no chemistry complex enough to support life. Just simple atoms moving according to the laws of physics. But gravity gradually collected this gas into denser and denser regions until nuclear fusion ignited the first stars. For the first time, the universe began creating more complex elements: carbon, oxygen, silicon, iron, the building blocks of rocky planets and organic chemistry. When these early stars died and scattered their heavier elements into space, they seeded the universe with the raw materials for chemistry, for geology, for biology. Second and third generation stars formed solar systems with rocky planets where complex chemical reactions could occur. On at least one of these planets, our Earth chemistry became so complex that it crossed the threshold into biology. Molecules began making copies of themselves. DNA emerged as the most successful self-replicating molecule, beginning the 4 billion year experiment in creating increasingly complex forms of life. And then, relatively recently in cosmic terms, DNA achieved something unprecedented. It created beings capable of consciousness, of self-awareness, of understanding their own place in the universe. Through your eyes, DNA sees the stars from which your atoms came. Through your mind, it contemplates the vast spaces between galaxies. Through your wonder, it experiences awe at the beauty and complexity of its own creation. You are the universe becoming aware of itself. The atoms that make up your brain were forged in stellar cores billions of years ago, and now they have organized themselves in such a way that they can contemplate their own cosmic origin. The universe has spent 13 billion years creating you, not you specifically, but conscious beings like you who can experience wonder, ask questions, and seek understanding. DNA's hidden agenda, from this cosmic perspective, might not be hidden at all. It might be the most obvious thing in the universe. The continuous drive toward greater complexity, greater consciousness, greater capacity for understanding and appreciation. DNA discovered that conscious beings are more successful at survival than unconscious ones. But it also discovered something more profound, that consciousness itself seems to be a fundamental direction of cosmic evolution. Every moment of awareness you experience, every flash of insight, every feeling of connection or wonder or love, these might not be mere byproducts of genetic programming, but expressions of the universe's deepest drive towards self-understanding. Your consciousness is not separate from cosmic evolution, it is cosmic evolution, happening right here, right now, in your own mind. When you look up at the night sky and feel that sense of awe and connection, you're not just a human being admiring distant stars. You are the cosmos contemplating itself, stardust that has become conscious enough to recognize its own cosmic origin. The elements in your body were created in stellar cores, and now they have organized themselves in such a way that they can understand where they came from. This gives your life a significance that goes far beyond individual human concerns. You are not just trying to survive and reproduce and find happiness. You are participating in the universe's own journey toward greater self-awareness. Every question you ask, every moment of wonder you experience, every insight you gain into the nature of existence, all of this contributes to cosmic evolution. Your DNA doesn't just have a hidden agenda for your individual survival and reproduction. It's participating in the universe's agenda for greater complexity, greater consciousness, greater understanding. And you, as DNA's most conscious creation, are actively participating in that cosmic agenda every moment you're awake and aware. Throughout our exploration tonight, we've discovered that DNA's agenda is far more sophisticated and benevolent than it might first appear. Yes, DNA is concerned with survival and reproduction, but its strategies for achieving these goals involve creating beings capable of love, wonder, creativity, cooperation, and consciousness. DNA has learned that happy, healthy, connected, curious beings are more successful at survival and reproduction than miserable, isolated, incurious ones. This means that serving DNA's agenda often feels like fulfilling your deepest human needs and values. The genetic programming that drives you to seek social connection serves both biological imperatives and psychological well-being. The genetic preferences that draw you to natural beauty serve both ancient survival strategies and contemporary needs for restoration and peace. The genetic drives that motivate creativity and learning serve both adaptive advantage and personal fulfillment. Your genetic need for social connection isn't just about finding mates and raising offspring, it's about the fundamental human requirement for belonging, support, and meaningful relationship. Working with this genetic programming might mean prioritizing time with loved ones, investing in community, and developing the social skills that create strong, lasting bonds. Your genetic responses to natural environments aren't just about finding good hunting grounds, they're about the deep restoration that comes from connecting with the living world of which you're a part. Working with this programming might mean spending more time outdoors, cultivating plants, paying attention to natural rhythms and seasonal changes. Your genetic drives toward exploration and learning aren't just about finding new resources, they're about the profound satisfaction that comes from growth, discovery, and expanding understanding. Working with this programming might mean pursuing lifelong learning, embracing new experiences, and maintaining curiosity about the world around you. Your genetic programming for physical activity isn't just about hunting and gathering, it's about the well-being that comes from using your body as it was designed to be used. Working with this programming might mean finding forms of movement that feel good, that connect you with your physical heritage as a creature designed for activity and strength. Even your genetic programming around stress and challenge can guide you toward resilience and growth. Understanding that your stress response system was designed for short-term physical challenges can help you develop better strategies for managing modern psychological stressors. You might seek out brief, intense physical challenges that satisfy your genetic need for overcoming obstacles, while developing mental practices that help regulate your stress response in situations that don't require physical action. Your genetic programming around sleep and rest isn't just about conserving energy, it's about the essential human need for restoration, dream processing, and cellular repair. Working with this programming might mean honoring your natural circadian rhythms, creating restful environments, and treating sleep not as lost time but as an essential component of well-being. Perhaps most importantly, your genetic capacity for meaning-making and spiritual experience isn't just about group cohesion, it's about the deep human need to feel connected to something larger than individual existence. Working with this programming might mean cultivating practices that connect you to the cosmic story we've explored tonight, to the biological heritage that connects you to all life, to the ongoing conversation of consciousness with cosmos. The beautiful irony is that when you work with your genetic programming rather than fighting against it, you often find that DNA's ancient agenda aligns perfectly with contemporary wisdom about well-being. The lifestyle choices that serve genetic imperatives, strong social connections, regular physical activity, time in nature, sufficient sleep, meaningful work, lifelong learning, spiritual practice are exactly the choices that research shows promote happiness, health, and longevity. DNA has spent 4 billion years learning what makes conscious beings thrive. That accumulated wisdom is available to you, not as a constraint, but as a resource. Understanding your genetic heritage can help you make choices that honor both your biological nature and your conscious values, both ancient wisdom and contemporary insights. Now, from this vast cosmic perspective, let's return to one of the most fundamental human experiences: loneliness. That feeling of being separate, isolated, cut off from others and from the larger world. That sense that you're just one small, temporary consciousness adrift in a vast, indifferent universe. But what if loneliness is based on a fundamental misunderstanding of what you actually are? What if the feeling of separation is an illusion created by the boundaries of individual consciousness, and the deeper reality is one of profound, unbreakable connection? From the cosmic perspective we've been exploring, you are not separate from anything. The atoms in your body are the same atoms that make up distant galaxies. The DNA in your cells connects you to every living thing on Earth. The consciousness that allows you to contemplate these ideas is the universe's own capacity for self-awareness, temporarily localized in your particular nervous system. You are not a visitor to this universe, you are this universe, temporarily arranged in the form of a questioning, wondering, conscious being. The sense of separation you sometimes feel is like a wave feeling separate from the ocean, or a cloud feeling separate from the sky. The boundaries are real at one level, but at a deeper level, there is only the ocean, only the sky, only the universe expressing itself in countless temporary forms. When you feel lonely, you're forgetting your cosmic heritage. You're forgetting that you're made of the same materials as the stars, that you carry the genetic wisdom of 4 billion years of life, that your consciousness is the universe's own capacity for self-awareness. You're forgetting that every breath connects you to the global respiratory system of the planet, that every meal incorporates the solar energy captured by plants, that every thought participates in the ongoing conversation of mind with cosmos. Understanding your genetic heritage can be profoundly healing for loneliness because it reveals just how connected you actually are. The DNA in your cells has been in conversation with other DNA for billions of years. You carry within you the accumulated wisdom of countless generations of successful survival, adaptation, and reproduction. You are part of an unbroken chain of life that stretches back to the very origins of biology on Earth. But the connection goes even deeper than biology. The elements that make up your DNA were created in stellar nucleosynthesis billions of years before Earth even existed. The carbon atoms in your genetic code have been part of this cosmic story since shortly after the formation of our galaxy. You are not just temporarily alive, you are temporarily conscious stardust. A brief flowering of cosmic self-awareness in an ongoing process that has been unfolding for billions of years. From this perspective, loneliness begins to seem almost impossible. How can you be lonely when you are intimately connected to every living thing on Earth through shared genetic heritage? How can you feel isolated when you are made of the same materials as distant galaxies? How can you feel separate when your consciousness is the universe's own capacity for wonder and understanding? The feeling of loneliness might actually be homesickness, a dim memory of your cosmic origins, a longing to reconnect with the larger story of which you're a part. When you feel most isolated, you might actually be feeling the pull of your true identity as a temporary expression of cosmic consciousness, a brief arrangement of ancient atoms that has somehow become capable of love and wonder and understanding. This doesn't diminish the reality of individual human experience or the importance of personal relationships and community, but it places these experiences in a larger context that can provide comfort and meaning even in times of isolation. You are never truly alone because you are never truly separate from the cosmic process that created you and continues to sustain you. Every moment of connection you experience with another person, every feeling of belonging you find in community, every sense of harmony you feel with nature, these are not just psychological states, but moments when you remember your true identity as a temporary expression of universal consciousness, a brief flowering of cosmic self-awareness. Now, as we prepare to complete our cosmic journey and return to the practical reality of your daily life, I want to explore a beautiful possibility. What if working with DNA's agenda, rather than against it, could actually make you happier, healthier, and more fulfilled? What if understanding your genetic heritage could provide a roadmap for living well that honors both ancient biological wisdom and contemporary human values? This doesn't mean you have to be controlled by genetic programming. It means you can work with it skillfully, like a sailor working with wind and current rather than fighting against them. You can honor your genetic needs for connection while choosing the specific relationships and communities that reflect your values. You can satisfy your genetic drives for exploration while choosing the particular adventures that serve your growth. You can fulfill your genetic capacity for meaning-making while choosing the spiritual practices and philosophical frameworks that resonate with your understanding. Working with DNA's agenda doesn't require giving up individual choice or personal values. Instead, it requires understanding the deeper currents that influence your choices, so you can work with them more skillfully. It means recognizing that your biological heritage and your conscious aspirations are not in conflict, but are different aspects of the same cosmic process that created conscious, choosing, wondering beings like you. When you align your choices with both genetic wisdom and conscious values, you often find a sense of ease and flow that comes from working with natural processes rather than against them. You discover that serving your deepest biological needs often feels like fulfilling your highest human aspirations. You realize that you don't have to choose between being a biological creature and being a conscious agent. You can be both, fully and simultaneously. This partnership between genetic heritage and conscious choice might be the key to living well in the modern world. Instead of seeing DNA's influence as something to overcome or submit to, you can see it as an ancient wisdom tradition that provides guidance for contemporary living. Instead of feeling controlled by biological imperatives, you can feel supported by millions of years of accumulated learning about what makes conscious beings thrive. Your DNA doesn't want to control you, it wants to collaborate with you. It has spent billions of years learning to create conscious, choosing, creative beings precisely because such beings are more successful at navigating complex environments and creating meaningful lives. Your consciousness isn't a rebellion against genetic programming, it's genetic programming's greatest achievement. As we prepare to return from this cosmic journey to the intimate reality of your own experience, remember this. You are both the product of the longest experiment in the history of the universe and an active participant in that experiment's ongoing evolution. You carry within you the wisdom of the ages and the responsibility for creating the future. You are both ancient and utterly new, both determined and completely free, both individual and universal. The hidden agenda of DNA isn't really hidden at all, it's the universe's own drive toward greater complexity, greater consciousness, greater capacity for wonder and understanding. And you, right here, right now, are the leading edge of that cosmic agenda, temporarily conscious stardust, contemplating your own magnificent existence. In our final chapter, we'll explore what this cosmic perspective means for how you live your daily life, how you relate to others, and how you find meaning in the simple miracle of being alive, aware, and capable of wonder in a universe that has spent billions of years creating beings like you who can appreciate its beauty and contemplate its mysteries. As our journey through the hidden universe within you draws toward its close, I hope you're feeling that deep peace that comes when understanding settles into wisdom. Your breathing has probably slowed, your body has found its natural rhythm of rest, and perhaps you're beginning to sense how profoundly this exploration might change the way you experience your daily life. We've traveled together from the bustling newsroom of your cellular nucleus to the cosmic perspective of 13 billion years of evolution. We've discovered that DNA's hidden agenda might not be hidden at all, but rather the universe's own journey toward consciousness, beauty, and understanding. Now, as we prepare to return you to the gentle embrace of sleep, let's explore what it means to live with this ancient passenger, not as its prisoner, but as its most conscious collaborator. Understanding your genetic heritage isn't just fascinating, it can be profoundly practical. When you recognize that many of your impulses and preferences reflect millions of years of evolutionary wisdom, you can work with these tendencies rather than fighting against them, creating a life that feels both authentic and sustainable. The beauty of being human is that you are both determined and free. You are shaped by forces much larger than individual choice, genetic heritage, cultural conditioning, historical circumstances, cosmic evolution itself. And yet, within these larger patterns, you have genuine agency, real choice, meaningful influence over your own experience and the experiences of others. You don't have to choose between being a biological creature and being a conscious agent. You can be both, fully and simultaneously. You can honor your genetic heritage while also transcending its limitations. You can work with evolutionary programming while also creating entirely new possibilities for what conscious beings might become. Perhaps most importantly, understanding DNA's influence doesn't end the mystery of existence, it deepens it. Science is not about finding final answers, but about engaging in an ongoing conversation with the magnificent complexity of reality. Every discovery reveals new questions, new possibilities for wonder, new invitations to explore the endless depths of existence. The more we learn about genetics, epigenetics, the microbiome, and consciousness, the more mysterious and beautiful life becomes. We're discovering that you're not just a human being with human DNA, but a walking ecosystem hosting countless forms of life, all engaged in conversations so complex, we're only beginning to glimpse their significance. New discoveries are constantly reshaping our understanding of what it means to be human, what it means to be conscious, what it means to be alive in a universe capable of creating beings like you who can contemplate their own existence. The conversation between science and mystery, between knowledge and wonder, continues to evolve and deepen. So I invite you to remain curious about the microscopic dramas playing out within you right now. As you drift towards sleep, remember that billions of conversations are continuing in your cells. Ancient wisdoms are being expressed through your biology. Cosmic processes are unfolding in your consciousness. You are both the inheritor of the deepest wisdom in the universe and an active participant in its ongoing evolution. You are both temporary and eternal, individual and universal, determined and free. You are the cosmos becoming conscious of itself, stardust learning to wonder, the universe's own capacity for love and beauty and understanding, temporarily arranged in the magnificent form of a questioning, dreaming, hoping human being. Sleep well, knowing that you are part of the most extraordinary story ever told, and that your own conscious participation in that story matters more than you can possibly imagine. Your DNA wants you to move your body regularly, not because it's trying to control you, but because movement was essential for survival throughout human evolution. Your genetic programming rewards physical activity with endorphins, improved mood, better sleep, and enhanced cognitive function. Instead of seeing exercise as a chore imposed by modern health culture, you can recognize it as collaboration with ancient wisdom that genuinely wants you to feel good. Your DNA wants you to connect with others not just for reproduction, but because social bonds were essential for survival, protection, and resource sharing throughout human history. The loneliness you feel when isolated isn't a weakness. It's genetic programming encouraging you toward the social connections that research shows are essential for both physical and mental health. Your need for belonging isn't needy, it's ancient wisdom guiding you toward one of the most important components of well-being. Your DNA wants you to spend time in natural environments because these were the environments where humans evolved and thrived. The restoration you feel when you walk in a forest, sit by water, or watch clouds isn't just personal preference, it's genetic programming that recognizes the environments where you're most likely to flourish. The stress reduction, improved mood, and enhanced creativity that come from time in nature reflect your biological heritage as a creature of the natural world. Your DNA wants you to rest when you're tired, to eat when you're hungry, to seek shelter when you're cold. These aren't inconvenient biological limitations, they're sophisticated guidance systems developed over millions of years to help conscious beings like you thrive. Maybe your ancient passenger isn't so demanding after all. Maybe it's offering gentle, persistent guidance toward choices that serve both survival and well-being. From this perspective, every moment of your existence becomes an opportunity for profound gratitude. The simple fact that you can breathe, think, feel, and wonder represents the culmination of the most extraordinary journey in the known universe. Every breath you take is a collaboration between you and your genetic heritage. Your lungs, shaped by millions of years of evolution, extract oxygen from air with incredible efficiency. Your hemoglobin, crafted through countless generations of refinement, carries that oxygen to every cell in your body. Your cellular machinery, inherited from the very first living things on Earth, transforms that oxygen into the energy that powers consciousness itself. You are not just alive, you are a conscious, questioning arrangement of ancient stardust. The carbon atoms in your DNA were forged in stellar cores billions of years ago. The iron in your blood was created in the nuclear furnace of a dying star. The calcium in your bones, the phosphorus in your thoughts, the oxygen you breathe, all of it represents the universe's 13 billion-year journey toward creating beings capable of wonder. Every moment of awareness you experience is a miracle of such astronomical improbability that it defies comprehension. You exist because countless cosmic events aligned perfectly. Stars formed and died at just the right times, planets condensed at just the right distances from their suns, chemistry became complex enough to support life, evolution stumbled upon the extraordinary innovation of consciousness. And now you're here, capable of contemplating your own existence, capable of love and beauty and meaning, capable of asking questions about the very forces that created you. You are the universe's way of experiencing wonder at its own complexity and beauty. Understanding your genetic heritage can also be profoundly liberating because it helps you find peace with both your capabilities and your limitations. You didn't choose your genetic makeup any more than you chose the family you were born into or the historical period of your existence, but you can choose how to work with the genetic materials you've inherited. Genetic influence doesn't eliminate personal responsibility, it provides context for it. Understanding that you might have genetic predispositions towards certain behaviors or health conditions doesn't excuse you from making conscious choices, but it can help you make more informed, compassionate choices about how to live well with your particular genetic heritage. If you have genetic tendencies toward anxiety, understanding this can help you develop more effective strategies for managing stress, rather than simply judging yourself for feeling anxious. If you have genetic predispositions toward certain health conditions, this knowledge can guide you toward preventive choices rather than leaving you feeling helpless or guilty.